afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are happy to have you. My name is John Shoemaker from the Department of Educational Technology for the School District of Palm Beach County. And this is our 2023 Spring Virtual Learning Experiences extravaganza, if you want to say. So this is our second live stream today. We're going to be meeting with Loggerhead Marinelife Center, which is always one of our fun partners to work with. All of our students always love asking questions about the turtles, so we're super excited to check in again with them and see how everything is going. Before we do that, though, we always go through a little bit of housekeeping. And so as a reminder, this session is being recorded on our YouTube channel right now. It'll always be here, so you can always come back and watch the recording, share it with a friend, or anything you want to do with that. And you can always reach out to us at EdTechPBC on Twitter. We love to see what you're doing in the classroom. And honestly, we love to amplify your voice, teachers. So please feel free to tag us in anything that you're doing that is tech related. And we will try to amplify your voice by retweeting and chatting back with you. So that's at EdTechPBC. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel down below and hit that like button to give this a thumbs up so that we can share this with other people, especially those people who may not be in Palm Beach County. It'll show up on their YouTube feed as well. And finally, don't forget, over there on the right-hand side is the chat button. I see a couple of us joining from Royal Palm School and Jerry Thomas Elementary. So welcome to chat. All you have to do is hover over there, click in the button, and start typing. If this is your first time here, then you do have to click create a channel. And once you've created a channel, just make it whatever your name is with your district account. And then you can then just start chatting with us. We would love to see your students' questions in the chat box. That's the whole point of the chat there. So we would love to see what your students think and what their thoughts and questions are here as well. And so with that, I am going to hand it over to our partner at Loggerhead. Her name is Andrea, and she is the education manager at Loggerhead. So if you're interested in taking a field trip there as well, she would be the one that you would talk to get your students out there too. So Andrea is going to give us an intro here, and then we're actually going to follow her out and see the tanks with all the turtles in it. So go ahead, Andrea, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. As you already heard, my name is Andrea. I am the STEM Education Manager here with Loggerhead Marinelife Center. So I take care of all of our school groups and any type of school programming. So definitely if you want to come to us or you want us to come to you, you can definitely contact me at Loggerhead. So right before I start, I just want to give you a little background about Loggerhead Marinelife Center. We are an active sea turtle hospital. We are taking care of our sea turtle patients that are sick and injured, some turtles that we might find on the beaches. So people just like you might be walking our beaches, see some sea turtle that just doesn't look like it's healthy or maybe not acting normal. And then you're going to give us a call, or FWC. We're going to go out and check out that sea turtle, see what the issue might be. And then if we deem that it needs to be in our facility, we're going to take it into our facility and we're going to go into the sea turtle hospital, make it all nice and better, and then hopefully be able to release them back out into the wild once they're all nice and better. So I want to talk first a little bit about some of these issues that we see with our sea turtle patients. So I have a couple toy turtles first. So as you can see, there is something that does not look right with our sea turtle. So our sea turtle patient here did swallow some plastic. This is a really common thing that we see with our sea turtles. So a lot of our sea turtle patients, we actually have to wait for them to poop. And when we see them poop, there's actually sometimes plastic in that. And so this is really, really bad because some of our sea turtles love to eat jellyfish. Now in the water, this plastic right here is going to look like a jellyfish, and that's how they think that it gets into their system, is because they're eating it because they think it's that nice, yummy jellyfish that they want to eat. Now another issue that we see with our sea turtle patients is, if you guys can see right here, he has a little hook in his mouth. He also has some monofilament line, some plastic fishing line in his mouth. So if you guys know where Juno Beach is, we are very close to the pier. And so we actually get a lot of sea turtles that get hooked off of the pier because they're going for that easy snack. So they see a squid or a fish or something on the fisherman's hook, and they say, ooh, that's yummy. That's an easy free snack right there. It's not swimming away from me. So they're going to take a chomp out of that. And unfortunately, it's a hook because it's meant for fishing. And now they have it in their mouth. Sometimes they get it hooked hooked into their flippers or any soft part of their body. Now this part right here on the shell is not soft. It is actually very hard, so we don't see it ever getting hooked into their shell. It's going to be in these really soft bits of that sea turtle's body. Now another issue that we're going to see, which is also another thing that humans have created, is we see sea turtles that come in with these lines. So the straight lines down this sea turtle shell is actually because not from a shark, but from humans. And so this is from boating. So if anybody likes to go out on a boat, that's perfectly fine. We love going out on the boat. It's so much fun, but we have to watch out for sea turtles. So this is a sea turtle. They had to come up for air. So he's coming up to the surface. He's taking a breath, and oh no, there's a boat above him. So he tries to dive back down, and that propeller, the back of that boat that's helping it go through the water, is going to create little marks into that shell. Now the shell is really hard, like I said, so it's there to protect our sea turtles. And we want to make sure that it doesn't hit any of this shell or break through. I'm going to show you why in just a minute, but it's really important that it doesn't break through because the rest of the sea turtle's body is underneath, so all of those organs. We need to make sure that no water gets in there because it shouldn't get in there. And then the last thing that we see our sea turtle patients coming into us, this last one is not because of humans. So if you see something that looks like this on a sea turtle, this is actually from a shark. So a lot of sharks actually really enjoy eating sea turtle. It's just the life cycle of sea turtles and sharks. And we have to remember our predators are super important too. We want them to have food and survive out in the wild. But so they're gonna try and take a chomp out of this sea turtle. Now, if you notice, he took a chomp out of this back leg, this back flipper, and it kind of made little marks, little teeth marks in the sea turtle shell. But he wasn't able to fully break through the shell because remember I said this sea turtle shell is really hard. So what the sea turtle likes to do when a predator is coming towards it is it actually, if that sea turtle can't get away fast enough or hide, he's going to put that shell towards that shark so that the shark hits this part because it's really hard to break it. So that shark, generally when we see shark bites, they're going for the really soft bits of our sea turtle patients. And we actually have some sea turtle patients here today that we know must have had some type of interaction with a predator, so probably a shark, because they're missing part of their flippers and things like that. Now, obviously we want all of our sea turtles to have all of their flippers and all of their limbs, but it's okay. So if we can make this sea turtle nice and better, it can actually still survive out in the wild with just 3 flippers. And so that's the great thing about Loggerhead Marinelife Center is we are actually going to be doing a public release this Thursday. And with one of those sea turtle patients, he is actually missing part of the flipper. So she'll be able to survive out in the wild, not with no issues. And so these are totally fine. And we just want to make them all nice and better. So moving on to that sea turtle shell that I just was talking about. So our sea turtles, like I said, have a really, really hard shell. And so this shell looks just like this. And so this shell is part of our green sea turtle shell. And the best way that we're going to be able to tell, if you can see there are numbers, is each individual right here, so you can see the outline. So that's called a scoot. So on these scoots, we're going to look at just one side of the shell, and we're going to count the scoots on this shell. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, because we see that there are 4 scoots on the side of the shell, we know that this is a green sea turtle. If there are 5 scoots, we would know that this is a loggerhead sea turtle. And then if we flip over this shell, if you can see inside, there are bones. So like I said, it was really important to make sure that our sea turtles they're not cracking that shell, especially because of boats, because this is all bone. So these bones right here on the side are actually like our ribs. So if you feel your rib cage, it's the same kind of thing in our sea turtle. So this is going to help support their body. And then right in the middle, it's not in here right now, but there is actually their spine. So we have spines also. So this is that backbone of that sea turtle. And so it's really, really important that we don't crack this because if they're in the water, we don't want any water to get inside of that shell. Now, a lot of people think that our sea turtles can leave their shell, but they actually can never leave the shell. So they have to keep growing with this shell the bigger that they get. And then they will hopefully get to be really, really big sea turtles. So our biggest sea turtle is going to be our leatherback sea turtle. Now that sea turtle is way too big to keep here at Loggerhead Marine Life Center because it is the largest of our sea turtles. They are about 7 to 9 feet in length, and they can weigh up to about 2,000 pounds. So that's really, really big, and we can't support them here at Loggerhead, but we can make sure that we support their little hatchlings, which we're going to get to talk about in just a few minutes about nesting season. So the next sea turtle that we find here off of our beaches is going to be our green sea turtles. Our green sea turtles are second largest besides for our leatherbacks, and they are going to be about 4.5 to 4 feet in length, and they're going to be about 400 to 500 pounds. And then our last sea turtle that we see nesting on our beaches here is going to be our loggerhead sea turtle. So the loggerhead sea turtle is really important to us because we are named Loggerhead Sea Turtle or Loggerhead Marine Life Center. And so that's actually because we have so many loggerheads that are nesting here off of our beaches. So last year, now this is the total amount that we saw nesting off of our beaches. We had 18,132 nests on our beaches. So we are only looking at 9.5 miles of beach. So starting at Juneau Beach area, a little bit south of here, all the way up into Tequesta. And so that is our 9.5 miles that we get to check out and monitor every single day. We have a team that goes out in the morning, we have a team that goes out in the evening, and they're both looking for sea turtles. So our leatherback sea turtles actually already started nesting. They started a little early this year. So we have right now 142 leatherback sea turtles that have already nested on our beaches. Now, technically, nesting season starts March 1st, but what we're seeing is this year they actually started a lot earlier. So they started in February. And then our next sea turtle, our green sea turtles, they actually also came up early this year, about 2 to 3 weeks earlier than normal. But our green sea turtle count as of today is 53 green sea turtles. And then our loggerheads, like I said, we have a lot of loggerheads here. We are actually the second largest in the entire world for how many loggerheads we have. We are the first largest nesting area for our loggerheads in the Northern Hemisphere, so all of America. And so our loggerheads, as of to date, we are at 2,641 loggerheads, which is amazing. So our season has really taken off already, with giving us a total of 2,836 nests as of today, which is amazing. So we're going to get to go outside. We're going to look at some of our sea turtle patients, and we're going to get to talk a little bit about what we do here at Loggerhead Marine Life Center. So we're just going to head on out to our sea turtle hospital. Perfect. So this is our outdoor hospital. If you can see, they are actually bringing a patient back out to their tank right now. So they do periodic checks throughout the entire day to make sure that our sea turtles are all nice and healthy. And they're just putting them back out in their tank. They probably took that turtle out maybe an hour ago, and they're just doing checkups to make sure that their weight is still up, so that they're gaining weight, making sure that all of their vitals are good, so they're taking blood samples and other things along those lines, making sure that they're super nice and healthy before we get to release them back out into the wild. So the first sea turtle patient we are going to talk about today is Cowabunga. So this is Cowabunga. If you can see him swimming around in that tank right there. Now we are in the ICU. So if you guys have ever heard of an ICU, they also have an ICU in the hospital. So it's very similar in our sea turtle hospital because our veterinarian, who is similar to a doctor, she's going to say that all the turtles in here, we just need to make sure that they are a little bit away from the general public, that they are, having extra care, making sure they're all nice and healthy before we put them in the tanks where a lot of people can get to see them every day. So Cowabunga actually came from Lantana, down a little bit south of Juneau Beach. And so Cowabunga came in with a hook in the side flipper. And Cowabunga, if you can see, has some cool little stuff in his tank. We have a white PVC pipe in there. Now that is because of enrichment. So enrichment means that we are just trying to keep our sea turtle active. We're stimulating them to make sure that they're not super bored. So our sea turtles are just like people. If you were in the hospital and you weren't feeling well, and they said that you had to be in a room there for a couple of months and you couldn't have any TVs, you couldn't have anything to read, nothing to do, you'd be really bored. So the same thing with our sea turtles. We want to make sure that they have nice enrichment devices to kind of keep their brain active. So we'll actually get to change these out every once in a while, just so that our sea turtle has something new to look at. Oh, and Cowabunga just took a really big breath there. Hi, Cowabunga. And if you can see at the bottom of this tank, right there, there is a black stick that also has some type of green in it. So our green sea turtle, which is what Cowabunga is, loves to eat seagrass. And so seagrass is his favorite thing. And now that's really hard for us to grow here in our hospital, but a really great alternative is going to be lettuce. So we actually get to feed them romaine lettuce. We get to even feed them green peppers and cucumbers, and it gives them enough nutrients, the same nutrients that they would find out in the wild. So, but because this is not growing in our tank, we have to use that stick right there. It actually has some clamps on it, and those clamps are keeping that seagrass or the lettuce or cucumbers or whatever we're putting in there down onto the bottom of the tank so that it makes sure that our sea turtle is able to dive down and eat normally, so how he would out in the wild. Now our next sea turtle patient that we are going to go to is over here, and we have Felix. So Felix is resting, but as you can see, Felix is also a little bit bigger than Cowabunga is. But Felix came from Port St. Lucie, and so Felix originally had what's called FP. So it's a virus, and it causes a bunch of tumors on our sea turtles. Now, Felix has actually gone through 2 separate surgeries to remove those tumors, and he is already feeling so much better. So if you see, there is some red that's wrapped around in this tank. And we can see right here that he has some red tape around his tank. And that's actually just to show us that we need to make sure that we are super careful to not spread any germs to other sea turtles, because that virus is actually very contagious to our sea turtles. So they get all of their own stuff that's not going to switch into any other sea turtle tank. Felix loves you guys. He also wants to come and say hi. Okay, so we're going to keep moving on. You can see that all of these tanks right here are behind this fence. Now this is because of that ICU, so you're actually getting a behind the scenes tour of our sea turtle facility, because most people can't even get to see these turtles that are in here. So this is really special treat. Now this is Taylor right here, if you guys can see Taylor. Now if you notice, there is something on the back of Taylor's shell, that carapace. So if you guys can see it, it's kind of a whitish color. Now that is scarring. So Taylor was hit by a boat. Taylor also has the same virus that Felix does. So we needed to make sure that Taylor was all nice and better before we did any removal of the tumors. So because we needed to make sure he was strong enough and healthy enough before we went through this procedure. So Taylor was hit on the back of that carapace, that shell, and also hit a little bit on the head of Taylor's head. So it's really, really important. He went through a lot of emergency procedures to make sure that he was all nice and better. He actually got what's called a wound vac. So it was to close up that shell because it went straight into that carapace, that shell. And remember, we said that's really, really bad for our sea turtles. Okay, so now we're going to move on. So we're going to move on to one of my favorites, because he's actually been with us for quite a bit of time. So our sea turtles generally stay with us an average about 4 to 8 months. Now, oh, he is actually resting. He is underneath that platform, but this is Bowie. So Bowie came to us back in October, November time period. Bowie, if you know what a buoy is out in the ocean, it floats. But so the same thing happened. So when Bowie came to us, Bowie also had what's called FP, that virus, and he had so many tumors on him that he was actually floating at the surface, which was really, really terrible. So he went through multiple surgeries to remove all of those tumors. I want to say he had about 7 different surgeries just to keep those tumors away. And he's actually almost completely tumor-free now. And we're just monitoring him, making sure that he's acting like a normal sea turtle, making sure all of his vitals are normal, making sure none of those tumors come back, and then hopefully we'll be able to release Bowie back out into the wild. But Bowie is one of my favorites just because he's been with us for so long, and we've gotten to see how much great progress he has made while he has been with us. Now, I said that all of these platforms, these little PVC pipes here, are because of enrichment. Same thing for this platform right here. But what's really cool is our green sea turtles. They are very, very clean. So they love to have clean shells. So they not only use this platform here to get away from people, be in the shade, but they actually get to scrape their shells on this platform right here, and they get to clean their shell to make sure it's all nice and beautiful. That's partially why green sea turtles have such a beautiful shell when they are younger, and we don't see a bunch of those barnacles on their shell. Whereas our loggerhead sea turtles, we call them the lazy loggerheads. They're kind of like teenagers. Let's see. Oops. This is the turtle they were putting back in here before. So our lazy loggerheads are like our teenagers, and they don't like to clean as much as our green sea turtles do. So we find them a lot of times coming in with barnacles or seagrass or other algae growing on them because they just like to rest at the bottom. So you can see he is very big compared to those sea turtles we just saw. So our loggerheads, they don't get to eat, well, they don't like to eat seagrass as much as our green sea turtles do. They will eat it, but their favorite food is hard, crunchy things. So things like shells, crabs, lobsters. So they get to be super lazy, but they get all the really, really yummy food. They also really love to eat conch. So if you've ever taken a shell and put it up to your ear and heard the ocean, the animal that actually makes that shell and lives inside of it, that's what they really love to eat. That's one of their favorite foods. Now, if you notice, this sea turtle right here actually is missing part of that flipper, that front flipper. Oops. So it's kind of hard to see. But so this is one of our sea turtles that we are going to be putting out hopefully soon. And so we wanted to make sure that they are all nice and healthy before we get to put them out. And like I said, they can still survive out in the wild with partial flippers. So they don't have to have all 4 flippers. Now this one's a little bit more active, so we're going to get to show you this guy. But so this is another loggerhead sea turtle. So this is not even an adult. So they get a lot bigger than this, which is really, really cool. Hi, buddy. So this is one of the sea turtles we are actually going to get to release on Thursday. And I hope all of you will either get to come to our facility and get to see it. It's right off of our beach, so it's open to the public. Or hopefully we're going to live stream it on our social media so you guys get to watch it, maybe even at home. But so this sea turtle is actually very active right now, which is a great sign to see. We want to make sure that these sea turtles are acting as normal as possible and swimming around, diving for their food, going to the bathroom normally, not having any plastic come out of it. And so we're going to test their vitals. So like I said, our leatherback sea turtle we will never have in our facility just because they're way too big. They are our deep diving pelagic species, so they live really far into the middle of the ocean, and they only come to our beaches when they're starting to nest. So we know when it's getting close to nesting season because they're going to start coming inshore. And we don't know that much about leatherback sea turtles. We know a little bit, but what we're doing here at Loggerhead Marinelife Center is we have a research group that is focusing a lot on our leatherback species because we want to know more. We want to know where they're going after they leave our beaches, after they're nesting. We want to know where they're eating. So our sea turtles, our leatherbacks, they swim really, really, really far distances after they leave our beaches here and after they're done nesting. And we want to know where they're going. So we have actually seen some of our sea turtles, our leatherbacks, because we've tagged them, and we have seen them all the way up north. We've seen them in Maine, we've seen them in Canada, and we've seen them really, really far away from here, but they always come back to nest on our beaches here, which is really amazing. So we think that they have crystals in their brain that when they're born, they actually know exactly where to come back once they are able to lay eggs, which is really cool. So they have these magnetite crystals, and it's just kind of helping them like a GPS to say, oh, you need to go south. Oh, you need to go a little bit more west or east or wherever they need to go to find back to where they were originally laid, which is really, really cool. So we're going to move on from our loggerhead sea turtle, and we're going to move on to another sea turtle patient that we have here at Loggerhead. Now, while we are transiting, does anybody have any questions for me?
There are a couple of questions. I had asked the one about the virus you were talking about. I couldn't tell if it was FP or SP that those turtles had, and just curious, is it very common? And then what does it do to the turtle, and what do you do to help them?
Yeah, great question. So FP is called, it's F like Frank. So fibropapillomatosis. It is a virus that we're finding a lot of our sea turtle patients have. There is not a lot of studies and research done yet to show why this is happening. So we're not quite sure yet. What we do though to treat our patients, if it's external, we actually have a little O2 laser, so our oxygen laser that's able to remove them, remove those tumors from it. And so that is currently what we are doing to remove the tumors. Then we give them antibiotics, we give them tons of fluid and make sure that they're eating normally. And that's really all we can do, and hope that it will stop growing those tumors. So the more stressed out our sea turtle is, actually the bigger those tumors are going to start growing back, or they're going to keep growing and keep growing and keep growing. So we need to make sure that our wherever we're putting our sea turtle patients back out into the wild, once they're all nice and better, that they're not having a lot of stress. So we want to make sure that we're boating safely, that we're not putting any plastic accidentally into our ocean, because all of that, those things are going to create stress. And so those are just some of the things that we're going to do to treat our patients. Is mainly we're going to get rid of those with the laser, and then give them lots of antibiotics to hopefully make them feel better.
Gotcha. Miss Hunt's class, I believe at Forest Hill Elementary, is just curious, do you know what time the live stream releases on Thursday?
So we are planning to have it at 10 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if they'll start it exactly at 10 o'clock. Usually our sea turtle will get loaded into the trailer at 10 o'clock. And then from that point, they will get driven down to the beach. So I'm not sure if they'll start it at 10 or if they'll start it around like 10:15 when they get to the beach.
Okay, and that's perfect for some of our schools. So don't forget to check out Loggerhead Marinelife's website for that, and their social medias, and keep an eye on that if you want to live stream that for your class as well. That'll be another great experience now that you have a little bit more information about them. One more quick question is from Jerry Thomas, wondering if you can adopt the turtles at Loggerhead.
Yes, we can. So we say adopt. You can't bring the sea turtle home. A lot of people wish that they could bring them home and put them in their bathtub, but you can actually adopt a sea turtle, and that's going to go towards a lot of their medical care and their food. But we love to have schools adopt our sea turtle patients, and you'll get updates on what that sea turtle is doing, if they're getting released, things like that.
Awesome. I think that's all for right now. I see that Dana put the link in the chat to your website as well, so that people can look for that live release on Thursday. So I'll let you keep going for now. And if anyone else has any questions, please throw them in the chat box.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So this patient right here, this is Dora. Now, I said the other sea turtle patient had a partial missing flipper. You can actually see it really well on this sea turtle because that front flipper is completely gone. So Dora came into us. She is a loggerhead sea turtle. And so we think that a predator must have gotten to her flipper originally. And there was just a lot of infection in that flipper. So we had to kind of clean out that infection and kind of clean it all up so that she is now completely healed. But you can see that she doesn't have that front flipper, which I think is a really amazing story when you get to talk about them getting released again, because she's going to be able to do pretty well still out in the wild, swim really well. Now, if you can kind of see, her shell is kind of a greenish color and has some little white spots. So those white spots are actually from our old barnacles when she first came into us. And so we had to clean all those barnacles off because our sea turtles, like I said, our loggerheads don't really like to clean their shells as often as our greens. So we have some of the old parts of that barnacle, those little animals that are living on top of her, and she gets a nice little cleaning every once in a while to make sure that none of that grows back. Okay, so we're going to keep on moving to in our sea turtle hospital. So if you look in here, which is really, really cool, we have a special little sea turtle in there. And if you can see, she's actually camouflaging right now. So this is a hawksbill sea turtle. Now, I didn't get to talk about the hawksbill sea turtle because they are not usually going to be nesting off of our beaches here. They nest and they're found really far south of us, mainly in the Keys and even farther south. So this hawksbill sea turtle is considered to be a washback. So we know that she was born, or he, we actually won't know for another 30 years if they are a boy or a girl. But so it was washed back, hatched off of Miami Beach somewhere, washed back because we had all those really, really strong waves a couple of weeks ago. And if you can see, she's camouflaging in this seaweed. So this seaweed is called sargassum. And if you've heard the news, they've been talking about this big floating sargassum or seaweed coming towards us. And that's what this is. So this is actually natural for us to have. There is the Sargasso Sea that is off of our coast. It's in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And so our sea turtles, once they first hatch, they're going to go and they're going to swim as far as they can out into the Sargasso Sea. And they get to camouflage into that seagrass. They're using it for protection against any predators. They're also going to be eating the little animals that they find inside of it. So they're going to eat like little crabs, maybe little fish, little jellyfish, things like that. And then once they're big enough and they're strong enough, they don't need to hide as sargassum or that seaweed. They're actually going to come back closer to shore. So they're going to use it for protection, like I said, and you can see all those really pretty colors that sea turtle has on its shell, on that carapace. Hopefully you guys can all see them. But so this is the last of our hawksbill sea turtles that we have. We're hopefully going to get to release this one back out into the wild. We just wanted to make sure that this one was all nice and healthy because we actually did find plastic in its stomach. So it was pooping out some plastic for a little while. It hasn't pooped out any plastic recently in the last probably week or so. And so we think that he or she is nice and healthy. And so because they are so small, this is as small as they're going to get. Is going to be, they're probably around 2 to 3 years old now. But they're so small, we're not going to release them from the beach. We're actually going to get to go out into the middle of the ocean, past all the really strong waves and currents that put it back in, and we're going to release that way. Hopefully it has the best chance to make it back out to that sargassum or that Sargasso Sea to make sure that it can eat and act normally. So it's a really special treat just because we don't get to see them quite often in our facility. We have them every once in a while because they are off of our coast. Like I said, they're just not actually laying here on our beaches. Okay, so we're going to move on right now to Josie. Josie is our other sea turtle that we are going to be releasing on Thursday. And you can see that Josie is also fairly active right now. So Josie is also a loggerhead sea turtle, which is really cool because we get to, like we said, we're named loggerhead. So this is a species that we could see Josie coming back onto our beaches to lay her eggs probably in the next like 10 or so years. Now, I don't know exactly how old most of our sea turtles are because we don't get to age them. We can't go up to them and say, how old do you think you are? we have to guess based on how long their shell is. So when we take measurements of their shell, we take a curved length and we take a straight length of that shell or that carapace, and we're going to be able to say, oh, this is going to be classified as a hatchling or a juvenile or a subadult or an adult. So we actually know that Josie is not an adult. She is in between juvenile and substage. So if you see, there are actually some little metal things on the back side of the flipper, and that's actually showing you that she is ready for release. So hopefully in the next few years, we'll see Josie coming back to our beach to lay her eggs, which will be really, really awesome. It'll be full circle because we get our research team that will be able to get to do a lot of research on her and say, oh, we've seen this sea turtle before. So she gets what is called flipper tags, which is what you can see that it's kind of like an earring on her flipper. And then she also gets what is called a pip tag. So it's kind of like a microchip that your cat might have. So it's actually going to go into the sea turtle's shoulder. It doesn't hurt them at all. And then we have like a little scanner that we're going to be able to scan over those shoulders in probably 10 plus years when she might come back to our beaches. And then we'll be able to say, oh, this sea turtle was here before. We know exactly who this is. Or maybe we'll get to put a satellite tag on her and be able to track her movement. Now, like I said, we have a lot of sea turtles that have those missing flippers. So if you can see, she has a little missing nub. So she has part of that flipper there, but not all of that flipper is there. So she can still move it like a normal sea turtle. She still has some feeling in it, but we had to keep it all nice and healthy and clean. We actually think that she came to us with the missing flipper, that it actually healed in the wild. So she didn't even come into us because she had the missing flipper. She came into us for a totally different reason. And so that missing flipper was just kind of a surprise and a shock. But it's just showing you that they can heal out in the wild, but it took a lot of energy out of her. And so because of that, we ended up having to give her lots of antibiotics to make her all nice and healthy. And we gave her lots of fluids and food and let her recuperate here in our hospital. So while I'm moving on, does anybody have any new questions for me?
I do not see any other new questions as of yet. Do you have any idea about how long the average stay is for your patients there?
Yeah, generally we like to say that it's anywhere between 6 to 8 months would be our average, but they could be here longer, they could be here shorter. In the past, I believe we had a sea turtle that was here for about 2 years. So it is possible for them to be here longer. And then we have a lot of our little hatchlings that will just spend the night here, and then they get to be released the next day.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so if you can see this, it says, how do you measure up? So this is just to kind of show you with our sea turtle. So our leatherback is really, really big. This one says up to 7 feet, about 1,800 pounds. Sometimes, like I said, they can get up to 2,000 pounds. And then our loggerhead. So now you can see how tiny our little loggerheads are compared to that leatherback, and why we're not going to be able to have those leatherbacks in our facility. And then we have our Kemp's Ridleys. So we didn't get to talk about our Kemp's Ridley because they're not nesting on our beaches here, but it shows that they are even smaller. They are one of our smallest species, and they're about 2.5 feet in length and about 100 pounds. So the reason you don't see our green sea turtles up here is because they're very similar in size to our loggerheads. When our green sea turtles are fully grown, they're about 4.5 feet, 4 to 4.5 feet in length, and they're going to be about 400 to 450 pounds. So very similar to that loggerhead, but they are slightly bigger than that loggerhead, and we just don't want to we want to make sure that everybody can see how it compares to our leatherback. Okay, so we're going to keep on moving so that you can see some of the skulls of our sea turtles. So we have some replica sea turtle skulls over here just so you can see what it will look like. So we have our leatherback sea turtle right here, right there. Now the best way to kind of see or tell when you're just looking at a skull would be this mouth. So if you see right here, it kind of makes an M shape in that mouth, and that is a great adaptation for our sea turtles for what they eat. So this sea turtle specifically, our leatherback, loves to eat our jellyfish. So that's why we have a little toy jellyfish in front of him. And so he is actually going to hold on to that jellyfish in his mouth. So if I can balance this, put that jellyfish in his mouth. He's going to push all the water out of that mouth because he actually doesn't drink seawater. And so he's going to be able to push all the water out. He's going to hold on to that jellyfish, and he's going to move it down into his throat. And then he eats his weight in jellyfish every day. So if you remember, I said he's about 1,800 to 2,000 pounds once they're fully grown. So that means he can eat up to 2,000 pounds of jellyfish every day, which is cool. Now our next little sea turtle is our loggerhead. You can see that his skull is a little smaller than our leatherback sea turtle, but he has a really, really big head because of his special adaptation. So his special adaptation is he needs a strong jaw, which is why they have such big heads, because they like to eat those crunchy objects like I told you. So this is one of those shells that we would see him trying to eat. So he's going to crunch a hole into that and then eat the little snail that lives inside of it. And you can see right here in the picture, he's also eating a lobster. So they get the best diet, in my opinion, all of our sea turtles, because they get the yummy stuff that we like to eat. And then if we look at this really tiny little skull right here, you can see the difference. You know, we have our leatherback, we have our our loggerhead, and then our green sea turtle. So they have tiny little skulls because they don't need a big adaptation for that skull to crunch through anything hard. Like I said, they love to eat seagrass, which is why we have some seagrass right here. So they are called the lawnmowers of the ocean because they kind of act like you're a lawnmower at home. They're going to take that top little clipping and they're going to leave the rest of that plant. So that plant actually gets a nice little haircut. So we like to go and get our hair cut because it's going to make our hair nice and healthy and keep growing. Well, the same thing with our green sea turtle. They're going to keep eating the tops of that seagrass and give it a nice little haircut and make all that seagrass super nice and healthy. So they're going to be found along all of our seagrass beds, which is why it's so important for us to protect our seagrass out in the wild. And then our species that I told you I didn't get to talk about a whole lot today, they are the smallest of all of our species. And we have our hawksbill sea turtle. So this is that little guy that you guys saw in that little hatchling tank. So you can see he kind of has a funny looking skull. It doesn't look like the other skulls. And his favorite thing is to eat SpongeBob or a real sponge. So this is what a real sponge would look like out in the wild. And he actually does a really great service for our coral reef ecosystem. So he's going to eat the sponge to make sure that it doesn't overgrow and kill any of our coral. And it has a nice healthy balance. So it's really, really great for our ecosystem. And then we have our Kemp's Ridley sea turtle. So we have this little guy also. He has a really, really tiny skull. And our Kemp's Ridley, we don't get to see them as often here, but they love to eat those hard, crunchy things also, but they really mainly just go for our crab. So we have our blue crab right here. And he doesn't need a big crunchy jaw because he's not breaking through all of those really big shells or conchs or things like that. So he mainly is going to eat our lobster and our crab species. And they're really, really tiny. So before I take any more questions, I wanted to show you what our nest would look like. So like I said, it's nesting season right now. So starting March 1st, which our sea turtles actually started a little early because they don't have a calendar in the ocean, but so the sea turtles are going to come up to lay on the beach. They're going to come up and they're going to say, oh, the sand is really nice. I think this would be a great place to put all of my little eggs. And they're going to take their back flippers and they're going to start to dig down. Now, depending on the species, some are farther down into the sand than others. Some lay them really, really close to the surface of the sand. Some that lay them really far down, like even up to 4 feet down into the sand. But so they're going to make this little egg chamber. And you can see that it's really, really tiny. And so they're going to drop all of their eggs in here. Now, our sea turtles, depending on their species, are going to lay anywhere between 80 to 120 eggs. Now, out of those 80 and 120 eggs, the eggs that are at the top of the nest, which are closer to the warmer parts of our beach, are going to be our females or our girls. And the ones that are in the cooler sand at the bottom of our nest are usually going to be our boys. So we like to say hot chicks and cool dudes. And that's how we kind of determine if they're going to be a boy or a girl. So it's really important for us to actually watch the temperature around, because if you guys have ever been to the beach and you're in the summertime and you put your feet on the sand and you go, oh, ow, that's hot. It's the same thing. So our sea turtles, if it's way too hot, we're going to have a nest fully of females. So we have to actually make sure that we note down how hot it's getting during nesting season to see if we're going to get primarily females or males, because they're really temperature dependent. And then, so once they start to develop in that nest, they're going to wait about 2.5 to 3 months, and they're all going to start to hatch from this little egg. So these eggs are going to have these baby sea turtles, and they're all going to do what's called a boil. And so they all come together, all the brothers and sisters, and they actually start to make the sand look like it's boiling. You would think it's so hot that the sand is boiling, but it's not. It's actually our sea turtles. And so they're going to come to the surface, and they're all going to break through the sand, and they're all going to make a mad dash for the ocean. So it's really, really important that they do this boil, because they actually help each other get out of the sand. They all start to move and shake and shimmy until that sand starts to give way to that nest. Now, what we get to do here at Loggerhead is, because we do a lot of research, we will wait about 3 days after we see that a nest has already hatched, and we're going to go out and we're going to start to dig up that nest to see how many eggs actually hatched, if there's any sea turtles left in the nest that weren't able to make it out with their brothers and sisters. And we're going to get to do a lot of different research on those sea turtles because of their nest. So it's really, really important. And we do actually see a lot of sea turtles that are left in that nest. And what we get to do here is we will, if they're not strong enough and it's maybe in the middle of the day when it's way too hot to release them, we'll take them back to our center so that they can relax and cool off for half of the day until nighttime, and we get to release them at night. So if it's the middle of that day, we actually will just bring them back here. But if it's early enough when we catch that nest and we have little baby hatchling sea turtles, we'll get to go ahead and put them back out into the wild, essentially. We won't put them in the water, but we'll put them on the sand kind of close to the water and let them get their bearings, because they actually have to make sure that GPS in their brain is actually on the right track and that they know to go into the ocean and where to come back. Now, that's also really, really important for us to notice is all of our lights around our beaches, that we turn them to a reddish color or an amber color. And it's important because our sea turtles are going towards the brightest light, which is supposed to be the moon, but we love to live on the beaches or near the beaches or be near the beaches. And so we need to make sure that they're not coming into shore onto, the roads or sidewalks or things like that, because it's really important for us to protect these guys because they're endangered, which is really important for us to protect. Now, we already saw our shell of that sea turtle, but these are what those ribs look like. So when we flip that sea turtle's shell over before, these are the individual ribs, kind of like your ribs. And then we have some other sea turtle shells over here, and now you can see some more spine. So this is like that spine or that backbone that we have, and you can see it a little bit better on this sea turtle shell. Does anybody have any questions for me just yet?
Yeah, we have a couple of them. First, again from Ms. Hunt's class, do you ever get any hatchlings that need help?
Yeah, all the time. So we actually had a hatchling that had an eye that didn't fully develop, and so we had to help them and make sure that they were able to see their food and find their food before we release them back out into the wild. A lot of our hatchlings, if they're stuck in the nest, will be, they just don't have enough energy yet to make it out into the wild, so we have to make them all nice and healthy and strong. And if we keep them for quite a while, that's when we're going to take them on the boat once we release them and put them farther offshore so they don't get washed back in. But yeah, we get hatchlings all the time that need help.
Gotcha. And then the other question was, I'm guessing this is related to the nest. On average, how many out of the 80 to 100 survive?
That's a great question. So we don't know out of so 80 to 100, but what we say is 1 out of 1,000 actually survive. So that mama sea turtle is actually going to come back up to nest multiple times in a season, anywhere between 6 to 8 times. So let's say she's laying 100 nests or 100 eggs in each nest. Say she comes up eight times, so she has 800 eggs. You know, there is a possibility that all of those eggs, none of them will survive to adulthood. So a lot of them will hatch out, but then we get to, unfortunately, have a lot of predators. So they have to make it to the beach, even if they make it out of the nest. And we have crabs and seagulls and raccoons, which are all their predators. And then they make it out into the wild, and then they have birds and sharks and other fish that are going to eat them. So they have a really terrible survival rate, which is why we have to protect them so much.
All right, I think that's the last question we have here.
Awesome. Okay. Well, then I am going to move a little bit away from our sea turtles and show you a couple other really cool things that we have here at Loggerhead Marinelife Center. So we have an ecosystem terrace. And we like to call it our ecosystems because we have different ecosystems that you could see offshore of Florida. So the first one we're going to go up to is our Gulf Stream ecosystem. And so all of the animals in here are going to be here forever. Now, our other sea turtles we don't ever keep forever because we want to make sure that they are rehabilitated and go back out into the wild. But the animals that we see in this tank, if you can see there are 2 sharks that are swimming around, these are our ambassador animals. So we have 2 sharks in here, Victoria and Gertrude. They are our nurse shark species, and they're a species that you could find commonly off of our coast. Now, these are a very docile species, meaning they are very, I wouldn't say friendly, but they don't have aggressive tendencies. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people will get bit by them only because they know that they're so docile that they're not going to attack them, that people will grab their fin or their flippers and try and get to see them better, things like that. And they don't realize that sharks don't have bones. They're actually fully made out of cartilage, so they can turn really quickly and they can almost bend completely in half because they don't have a bone to stop them. But these nurse sharks in here have been here for quite a while. And so the nurse sharks are fed every single day, which is why they are in the tank with these other fish in here. And we don't really have a problem because they get fed so often and so much food that they don't feel like they should have to go after these fish that are in here. But these are some fish and some sharks, like I said, that we would find out in the wild right off of our coast. So we have some grunts in here. We have some, oh, if she's going to come over here. She's usually very photogenic, but she is a scrawled file fish. This is Frankie, if you can see her. There we go. Awesome. And then we're going to go upstairs a little bit more so that we can see some of the more animals that we have in our ecosystem terrace. So they get a really good view of all of our sea turtles tanks every single day because they get to see both sides. And in this middle tank, we have our deep dive tank. So this is where our sea turtles will get to dive down to make sure that they are able to dive before they get released. So they'll go into this tank as kind of like a little swim test. Nobody's in here right now. And it just proves to us that they're able to dive for their food, able to rest on the bottom, meaning that they're all nice and better and be released back out into the water. And then we have here, which is the tank. So we have some really cool antlers. We have one just hanging out right here. We have, if you see back, it's kind of hard, but Walter, he is our porcupine puffer fish. Now, our porcupine puffer fish he's going to eat mainly our hard shells like our clams and our mollusk species, and he has a beak. So we have to feed him little hard shells, clams, every single day because it's going to file back down the beak. Now, if you, as I saw on Bob and Mrs. Puff, this is actually what ever be puffed up, because that means that they are feeling stressed out. It could mean that
Looks like we might be lagging just a little bit as she's moving around there at the different tanks, obviously.
And then if you can see, we have Claude, that is the one that keeps going back and forth in the tank. Now, Claude is really cool because most of our fish species, oh, right there, actually can't board, but that's one of the cool adaptations Claude has, is that Claude, if he or she wanted, they could swim back and forth in that water. And then our last ecosystem that we're going to talk about is our mangrove ecosystem. So our mangroves are very, very important to Florida.
We will also just hang out here and hope that her Wi-Fi will come back in and out as she moves around. Not sure if Andrea, nope, there we go. Oh, we're back, I think.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what happened. Sorry about that, everybody. But so this is our mangrove ecosystem right here. So this is a really important ecosystem because it's going to protect Florida against a lot of storm surge, but also it's protecting our little fish and things like that. So it's acting like a nursery. So our fish, if you guys can see, there a bunch of them are swimming back. We have some look downs in here, which are the very silver fish that have like a crazy looking face. We have some drum in here. We have some sergeant majors in here. And now the roots of our mangroves are super important because, oh, there is our look down. So they have a funny looking face, but they're actually super thin. And so they can go in between those mangroves really quickly. Like I said, they are acting like that's going to act as a nursery for our smaller fish and maybe some crabs. So it's going to create a lot of food sources, but also create a lot of protection for our smaller fish species so that they can grow up. We also have a couple of stingrays in here, but they like to camouflage themselves. So if you guys have ever seen stingray before, they like to camouflage themselves by hiding underneath the sand, and they're going to push that sand all the way on top of their body. And then we have to do what's called a stingray shuffle. So every time you go into the ocean, you should always be shuffling your feet because they have a sixth sense that is able to feel vibrations. So those vibrations are going to tell that the stingray that, oh, something's near me, I need to move away. And then because of that, we won't step on them. So our stingray isn't going to be aggressive or anything like that. They're just trying to protect themselves, and so that's why they have a barb. But that barb is actually just for defense, and it's not like they use that for food or anything like that. Okay, you guys, so does anybody have any last questions for me?
I do not see any other last questions in the chat. Are there any of our classes out there that have any questions? And if not, I can also go through our ending and then come back if someone does throw a question in there.
Okay, sounds great.
Awesome. So if you do have a question, throw it in there and we'll get back to Andrea before we go. But I do want to share real quick. We had a great tour around Antietam National Battlefield and Park this morning in DC with our friend Tim Towsley. So please feel free to go back and watch that one from this morning. And then tomorrow at 10 a.m., we're going to be visiting the Norton Museum of Art. Again, another great partner we've done many live streams with. So we're going to be checking out a gorgeous statue there and doing some analyzing and reflecting on that as well. So it looks like Andrea dropped. So that's all we have for today. On behalf of the entire EdTech team, I want to thank you for being here. And oh, Andrea did pop back in. Are there any last minute questions that we do have? I'll give you about 5 or 10 seconds to type if it is. We gave them some time. Maybe not. Okay, well, thank you so much, Andrea. You've been awesome. I love exploring the turtles up there, so we always appreciate checking in with you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting us. We love doing this.
Awesome. So have a great afternoon, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.